Welcome back, Carpetsusians. My partner Ben of Hunt Texas Hogs got together with the good folks at Bering Optics and managed to procure for us a brand new Super Yoter prototype. Here are just some of the specs of the scope, most of which are the specs that I like, but it has many more than the ones that I'm listing here. So what's the first thing we're going to do? We're going to take it to the range. Alright, now this is pretty neat. You can actually see through the scope where I painted the head of the target. It's a lighter shade. It's cooled off slightly, which is pretty neat. Alright, I think I still may be slightly off. I'll try one in the center of the neck. That's a little better. Top of the head. I think I can actually see that one. We'll try back over here at 50 yards. We'll see where we impact here. Going from the center of the head on the small target. Alright, I think we're good to go. So Carpetsus, when hunting up in North Texas, was on my first property of the evening. I'd arrived early in order to look for fresh hog sign, and instead of finding fresh hog sign, I found hogs. I'm actually in field number 2, scanning into field number 3 through a fence row that has a lot of vegetation grown up around it. And there I just nuked the scope to help refresh the image. And here's what I was looking at. That's where I'm refreshing the scope. And obviously I don't have a shot from here. So I moved down to the fence line to where the gate is. The gate is actually where the driveway is through the property. And I've got one hog that you can see there. You can't see it very well because it's in knee-high Johnson grass. And here comes a bigger hog. I actually saw this hog cross the driveway with my unaided eye, maybe 80 yards down from where I was. Earlier with my handheld scanner, I'd seen at least 3 hogs in the field. I figure with this big one that has come in, I've got at least 4 now. So there's maybe 2 more that I'm not seeing that are somewhere in the high grass. At this point, and given the high grass, it looks like the big hog is going to be my best target. And I never managed to catch up with this runner.
Brass Catcher by Tactical Brass Recovery.
So the first hog down with the new Bering Optics Super Yoter is an 85-pound sow that was taken at 60 yards in daylight. I moved on to my next property where a few days previously I'd shot 3 boars. And I'm waiting to see if any other hogs come in, and while I do it, I'm watching the steer in the distance. The deer is out there at about 345 yards. There I'm manually focusing the Super Yoter. Now zooming in. I don't usually hunt this far, but with a stable platform, I could hunt at this distance with that sight picture. Eventually I did spy a hog on this property, and after about a 500-yard blind stalk, I finally got into a point where I can see the hog again, and he's on the other side of a valley, up on the hillside. At this point, I'm kind of stuck. I can't move too much farther forward because I've got a ravine at the bottom of the valley, and I don't want to try crossing that in the dark. Ideally, I'd like the hog to move a little closer towards me or to go ahead and go over the top of the hill so that I can go on after him. Now he's moved up the hill slightly, and I don't have a shot at this point because he's on the top of the hill, so it's a horizon shot. I know there's cattle behind him in the distance, and so this would not be a safe shot to take. At this point, it's just a waiting game. I'm continually scanning around me looking for other hogs that might be better targets, and all I'm seeing is this skunk, the cattle, and my hog up on the hillside, which is still in a bad position. Finally, the hog is moving downhill slightly. I just need him to move clear of the cattle, and I want to have land behind him when I take the shot. And notice I've changed over to a simple dot reticle. I really like using this reticle for making precise shots at distance. You don't have a lot of crosshairs or anything else cluttering up the screen. You've just got your aim point, and that's it. Alright, here we go. And that's the second hog down and the last hog of the night for the new Super Yoter-R. This hog turned out to be a 190-pound boar that was taken at 160 yards. 2 days later finds me on another property, looking at a field full of cattle, and there among the cattle is a coyote. The prevailing winds at this point are in my direction, which is good, so I could go after that coyote, and maybe go after this coyote way off in the distance. But my old hunting partner Dave told me that if you stare at a large herd of cattle long enough, sooner or later, you're bound to see a hog somewhere in the middle of them, and sure enough, he was right. But the problem here is, how am I going to shoot this lone boar out from the middle of all these cattle? So I started my stalk following this boar as it slowly moved through the cattle, and as I moved through the cattle tended to move out of the way. If you look closely, the boar is underneath and behind the cow that you see right there. And he is just happily feeding, completely unaware that he is being pursued, albeit rather slowly. Now he's starting to move into the more fringe areas of the herd. Not as many cattle are around him at this point. But I'm actually standing right next to some cattle that are actually shielding me from the hog, and as you've seen in a previous video of mine, they can step in front of you in a heartbeat. So I continued to follow the boar, and follow, and follow some more. And now finally I have him out in the open. Alright, here we go. I stay on him to make sure that he stays down, and that's going to be number 3. He was a 155-pound boar taken at 50 yards. So when I finished with him, I headed back towards the truck, but while doing my scans, back behind me in the next field, I spied this wet hog in the distance, and so I turned around in order to go head him off. At this point, I've almost caught up with him. I'm up on a ridge top looking down on him. He's on the other side of the fence, so I don't have a shot at this point. So I'm going to advance and try to move up broadside of him, and either catch him when he moves out into the field or when he moves into the field next door. You can really hear the wind blowing at this point. I assure you it's much faster than the 10 miles an hour that the Weather Service says it should be. I'm just trying to make some adjustments to the scope to see if I can improve the image as the hog walks along the fence. And then he starts his walk out into the field. And I'm going to get properly shouldered on the rifle. Watch what happens right here. That's hog number 4. Now, part of the reason I like using frangible ammo on hogs is because when you have pass-throughs, as you invariably will, you tend to have multiple fragments exiting the hog. Each one of them doesn't carry with it as much energy as a complete bullet, so it doesn't travel as fast, it doesn't travel as far, and it's much less danger to anything downrange. Watch carefully here in the slow motion. You can actually see multiple fragments taking multiple trajectories away from the hog. This is some great footage from the Super Yoter. And it doesn't look like any of those fragments made it any more than about 50 yards. So this hog was a 150-pound boar shot at 85 yards. And again, on the way back to the truck, I do have another animal downrange of the coyote. It's more than 900 yards away or so. My bullets would have about 32 feet of drop at that distance, so that animal is safe from this shot. You can hear me in the background trying to take a series of cleansing breaths. I've actually been stalking for quite a while. I've traveled over a mile in distance, been up and down hills. I was hoofing back to the truck, try to get some water, when I spied this coyote. And then once I got on the coyote, I realized I wasn't calm enough to take the shot, so here I'm trying to get nice and calmed down. Now I'm just waiting for him to clear the vegetation.
First coyote down.
He turned out to be a young male coyote that I took at 150 yards, and he was my last kill from my first 2 hunts with the brand new Super Yoter from Bering Optics.
Carpe sus, my friends.